Welcome to another episode of the AI-driven Swebbcast. The source content is all Swebb, but the interpretation and presentation is all AI.
Welcome to the deep dive. We take a close look at different sources, try to pull out the key insights so you can stay informed, but without, getting buried in information.
Yeah, helping you get straight to the good stuff.
Exactly. So this time, we're diving into something pretty interesting. It's an audio recording, a Swebbinar they call it, on church planting. It's led by Swebb.
Right, Swebb. He's a leadership coach, works in church operations training. Lots of people call him a thinking coach.
The thinking coach. Why is that?
Well, he just has this way of looking at things, sometimes a bit provocative, definitely makes you think differently.
Okay, I'm intrigued. And you mentioned church planting, but you said this is broader.
Absolutely. While that's the frame, the principles we're pulling out today, honestly, they apply if you're starting anything. Leading a team, launching an initiative, trying to get any vision off the ground.
Gotcha. So valuable insights for anyone in leadership, basically.
For sure. His perspectives, they really challenge some common assumptions.
Okay, let's unpack it then. Where does Swebb start? What are the big ideas here?
So he really emphasizes that there are these fundamental areas that people often skip over when they're excited about starting something new. He boils it down to three main themes.
Three themes. Okay. What's number one?
The first one he really hammers on is the foundational importance of definition.
Definition. Okay, sounds simple enough.
It does, right. But he makes a really strong case that it's overlooked way more often than you'd think. And he goes deep into what needs defining.
All right, so what's the first thing we need to define, according to Swebb?
First up is defining your why. He really pushes hard on the real motivations behind starting a church, or really any big project. Why are you actually doing this?
Okay. He's questioning the motives. What kind of motives does he see as weak?
Well, things like, oh, it sounded neat, or maybe someone else suggested it, maybe even ego, or building a personal platform. Things that aren't deeply rooted.
Right, the superficial reason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's where it gets kind of provocative. He talks about his experience helping launch campuses for a big church, Elevation Church. His first step, often trying to talk people out of launching.
Walk them out of it. Why would he do that?
It was a test, really, to gauge their conviction, their grit. If you could talk them out of it easily, maybe their why wasn't strong enough for the tough times ahead.
I see. It's like a stress test for their motivation.
Precisely. He also makes this crucial distinction between just being a good preacher or speaker and actually being a pastor, someone who leads and cares for a community day to day. They're related, but different skill sets, right?
That makes sense. You can be great on stage, but maybe not equipped for the relational grind of leadership.
Totally. So that's the why. Then he moves on to defining the what. As in, what is it you're actually setting out to build or do?
Okay, getting specific about the activities and goals.
Yeah. Are you mainly trying to preach sermons? Or are you building a broad online platform? Or is the goal to establish and lead a specific local church community?
Those sound different, even if they overlap sometimes.
They are quite different. And Swebb seems critical of people jumping straight to, say, posting sermon clips online without first building the actual foundation, the relationships, the core purpose.
Like putting the cart before the horse. Build the community before you broadcast it.
Kinda, yeah. You need that structure first.
Okay.
So after why and what, he gets into defining what you actually need.
And we're not talking buildings or equipment here, are we?
No, not primarily. His list is pretty raw. He starts with guts and grit, says talent alone just won't cut it. You need that toughness.
Inner resilience. Makes sense for starting something new. What else?
Discipline and integrity. And his take on integrity is interesting. It's not just don't steal or don't lie.
How does he define it then?
He talks about it more as wholeness, consistency across your whole life, your work, your health, your relationships, it all connects.
That is a broader view. Wholeness. Okay.
Then a compelling vision, but crucially, one that compels you deep down, not just something that sounds good on paper.
So it has to resonate personally, not just be for performance.
Right. And then he says you need the ability and the awareness to build leaders, investors, and enemies.
Whoa, hang on. Enemies. That sounds confrontational.
It does, doesn't it? But I think his point is, if you have a clear vision and you're leading strongly, you will encounter opposition or friction. It's almost inevitable.
So it's not about seeking conflict, but acknowledging that strong stances can create it.
That seems to be the idea. It's a natural byproduct of clarity and conviction. He also adds blinders to the list.
Blinders, like horse blinders.
Sort of. The idea of intentionally limiting how many outside voices and opinions you let in, especially early on. Too much advice can paralyze you.
Right, information overload. He has that great line, doesn't he? About being educated beyond our level of obedience.
Exactly. We know what to do. We just need to do it instead of seeking yet another opinion.
Okay, so that covers what you need. What about who you need? Team building.
Yes, defining who you need. But his first priority isn't filling a bunch of job titles.
No, what is it then?
Finding a really solid number two, a confidant. Someone who is just deeply committed to the vision.
Commitment over immediate talent, maybe.
That's the vibe. He stresses commitment and the willingness to learn anything over just having a fancy resume or being a buddy who offers quick help. It's about finding someone truly invested.
So less about the role, more about the person and their dedication.
And then he shifts the focus from titles like kids minister or connections pastor to the essential responsibilities that absolutely must be covered.
Function over form. What needs to get done, not just what positions sound good.
Exactly. Is someone overseeing how families connect? Is someone crafting a cohesive worship experience? Is the guest journey being thought through? Focus on those core functions first.
That helps avoid just blindly copying the staff structure of a giant established organization, right?
Yeah, totally. He cautions against that, and also against throwing around the word unique about your context without really defining what makes it unique and how that changes your actual needs.
Good point. Okay, so we've defined why, what you need, who you need, what else in definition.
Defining success. And crucially, looking beyond just the launch day hype.
Right. It's not just about having a big opening event.
No. He really pushes for thinking about long-term sustainability and growth. He questions that whole launch large, then inevitably drop-off model that some church planting groups seem to almost expect.
Is sustainable growth even predictable then?
Swebb argues yes, or at least more predictable outcomes are achievable if you've done the hard work of definition and you apply discipline. It requires setting clear metrics for success over different time horizons.
Like, what does success look like this week, this month, this year, 5 years from now?
Precisely. Having that clarity helps guide decisions. And the final piece of definition is maybe the most surprising. Defining your exit.
Exit. But we're just talking about starting.
I know, it sounds weird. But his point is about intentionality. Thinking about the intended lifespan or the next phase of the endeavor from the beginning.
Like having an end goal in mind, even if it's years away.
Yeah. He uses the analogy of Jesus having a very focused mission within a specific time frame. What does the preferred future look like in 3 years, 10 years? It shapes your strategy now.
And it probably also involves defining failure, right? Knowing when something isn't working?
Absolutely. Defining what failure looks like and maybe reframing it not as quitting, but as graduating or pivoting to something else if the path proves wrong.
Okay, wow. So that whole first theme, definition, is way deeper than it sounds. It's about profound clarity on multiple levels.
It really is. It sets the stage for everything else. Good. Which leads us to a second major theme, decisions.
Making decisive choices. Why is this so important for Swebb?
He sees decisiveness as just a top-tier leadership trait. His thinking is, good decisions move you forward. Bad decisions, okay, you can usually correct those, but indecision.
That just stalls everything, kills momentum.
Exactly. That's the real enemy, in his view. Indecision kills progress.
So how do we make better, more decisive decisions, according to him?
Well, the first insight connects right back to theme 1. It's about having pre-decided on your essentials and fundamentals.
Because you've already done the work of defining them.
Right. If your core priorities, your non-negotiables, are crystal clear, it makes ruling things in or out much, much easier. You avoid those reactive decisions.
What's an example of a reactive decision he'd warn against?
Like maybe a bunch of young adults show up one week, so you immediately decide, okay, we need a young adults ministry, without thinking if it actually fits your core strategy or if you have the resources to sustain it.
Reacting to the surface instead of checking against the foundation. Makes sense. What's the next decision point?
Knowing what is negotiable. Based on those predefined essentials, what has flexibility and what doesn't.
So understanding where you can compromise or adapt versus where you need to hold firm.
Yeah. He questions, for example, automatically assuming you need certain trendy ministries right away, like maybe a youth group or that young adults thing, if it doesn't align with your core defined purpose at that specific stage.
Being intentional about adding things, not just doing them because others do.
Exactly. And that leads to his third point on decisions. Setting clear timelines and actual metrics for adding things.
Moving beyond just feelings then.
Totally. Establishing clear triggers. When do we add a ministry? When do we hire staff? When do we add another service? It shouldn't just be based on, oh, it feels full.
He critiques that feeling full idea, doesn't he?
He does. He points out practical things like, are the front rows still empty? Is the center aisle huge and wasting space? Maybe optimize what you have before automatically adding more.
Using data and observation, not just vibes.
Right. And same with finances. He challenges assumptions about, say, expecting a certain percentage of giving immediately in a new church plant. Budgeting needs to be based on reality, on what resources you actually have, not just wishful thinking.
So good decisions flow from clear definitions and are guided by preset priorities and measurable triggers, not just gut feelings.
That's the core idea, which brings us nicely to the third big theme Swebb emphasizes, discipline.
Definition, decisions, and now discipline. How does he frame this one?
Discipline is basically the engine that makes the definitions and decisions actually happen consistently. It's the follow-through. And he highlights a few key areas. First, budget discipline.
Okay, so managing money carefully.
Yes, but it's more than just not spending frivolously. It's how you budget, how often you review and adjust it, and who's involved. He pushes for transparency.
Transparency around money. That can be tough in some organizations.
It can be. He critiques situations where there's maybe a lack of trust or clarity about finances within the team itself. He argues discipline includes teaching financial literacy and being open.
And he has some practical advice on reviewing the budget.
Yeah, he suggests reforecasting the budget like every single month.
Every month. Wow.
Yeah, but importantly, he says this isn't about changing your core vision every time income fluctuates. It's about adjusting your operating plan based on the current reality of income and expenses while keeping the pre-decided vision intact.
Adjusting tactics, not the overall strategy.
Exactly. And that leads to one of his really punchy lines. If money can change your vision, then it's not vision, it's preference.
Ooh, that's good. Vision shouldn't be that easily swayed by cash flow.
Right. He also warns new ventures against being too thirsty, spending big money prematurely, like renting a huge expensive space before you even have a consistent core group. Discipline means pacing yourself.
Okay, budget discipline is key. What's the next area of discipline?
Calendar discipline. This one sounds simple.
Plan your work and work your plan.
Pretty much. Plan ahead your teaching series, your events, your meetings, and then stick to it. Avoid knee-jerk reactions or constantly changing the schedule based on short-term whims or anxieties.
Treat the calendar commitments like promises.
That's a good way to put it. Follow through. And the final disciplinary he talks about is really interesting. Momentum mapping.
Momentum mapping. What does that involve?
He argues that momentum is less about creating it out of thin air with isolated events and more about stewarding the momentum you have or can anticipate.
So you don't just magically make momentum happen with, say, one big event.
Not necessarily sustain momentum, no. He questions if things like, a one-off trunk or treat or an egg drop actually build lasting forward movement on their own.
Okay, so how does mapping work?
The idea is you can actually anticipate the natural ebbs and flows. Like there are times of year when people are naturally more engaged or maybe less so. You can map these waves.
And plan accordingly.
Exactly. Optimize your efforts. Know when to push, when to rest, when might be the best time strategically for certain initiatives, like maybe that end-of-year giving series he mentions as an example.
So it's about working smarter with the natural rhythms, not just harder all the time.
That's the core idea. Steward the momentum you have or can predict.
Those three, budget, calendar, and momentum mapping, really bring the concept of discipline to life. Were there any other sort of miscellaneous points he made that stood out?
Yeah, a couple interesting side notes. One was about mismatched metaphors.
Mismatched metaphors.
Like using church plant sometimes and church launch other times to describe the same thing. He suggests picking one consistent metaphor helps create clarity and guides thinking, or even create a new one.
Huh. The power of consistent language. That's subtle, but makes sense.
Another point was about being careful not to solicit unnecessary questions or raise potential issues too early.
Meaning?
Like don't overshare potential problems or uncertainties before you need to. It can create anxiety or distraction where there wasn't any before. Manage the information flow.
Be mindful of what you put out there and when.
Yeah. And tied to that, his final point was about being really careful about the promises you make. Both the explicit ones in your mission statement.
And the implicit ones.
Exactly. Like what promises are your promotional materials making? He gave examples. Like if your Instagram feed shows polished, perfect gatherings, but the reality is much messier.
That creates a disconnect. Or promoting a local campus using images from the giant main stage of a megachurch.
Right. It sets potentially unrealistic expectations and can undermine trust if the reality doesn't match the implicit promise. Be authentic in your portrayal.
Okay, so pulling it all together. Swebb's framework seems to be built on these three pillars: definition, decisions, discipline.
That's right. And they're deeply interconnected. You need the clear definitions to make effective decisions, and you need the discipline to execute those decisions consistently over time.
And even though he's talking through the lens of church planting,
the principles are universal for leadership, aren't they? Starting a business, leading a nonprofit, managing a team project, get clear on the why, what, who, success, and even the exit.
Make decisions based on that clarity, not just reaction.
And have the discipline for the budget, the calendar, and understanding how momentum actually works.
His insights, while sometimes maybe a bit blunt or counterintuitive.
Yeah, they definitely make you think. They offer a path to avoid some really common mistakes people make when launching something new. It's about intentionality.
Absolutely. It really forces you to examine your own assumptions. So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on from all this.
Yeah.
Consider your own work, your own projects, or leadership roles. Where might a lack of real deep definition be holding you back? Or maybe it's indecisiveness, or perhaps a lack of consistent discipline in planning or execution.
Which of those three, definition, decisions, discipline, needs more attention right now?
And maybe ask yourself, what's just one small concrete step you could take, maybe even today, to bring a bit more clarity or decisiveness or discipline into that area?
That's a great takeaway. Food for thought.
Definitely. Well, thanks for digging deep with us into Swebb's thinking.
Always interesting stuff.
We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.
Are you going to do something with what you just heard? Or are you just trying to be entertained? Share this episode, then connect with Swebb. Bring him to your headquarters or visit him in Austin, Texas. Swebb is a productive disruptor for leaders and teams in churches and marketplace organizations. His goal is to make you better first, make you a friend later. Swebb serves leaders and executive teams around the world, primarily focused on helping organizations maximize what they say they want to do. He drives you to execute on your expectations, even if it hurts your ego. He's not here to please everyone, nor does he seek validation. But if you're serious about elevating your leadership and team performance, you'll know where to find him. Connect with Swebb at swebb.fyi or on Instagram at swebbfyi. You doing all you said you'd do, that's what the church and the world needs.